Why don't we start up by you giving us a quick overview. What is IOP, the Innovation Outreach Program at Microsoft? How did it come to be? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, so back in 2009, I was at Bank of America. I spent my whole career there, almost 30 years. And in the last 7 years, I led innovation for the enterprise. And when you're in that kind of role, you have a constant appetite for stimulation from other places. Stimulation on new tech, the ways innovation is run, how to break through sort of innovation leadership challenges. And it's a lonely kind of job. So when Microsoft pitched this idea, 5 companies came together: 3M, Merck, BMW, and Bank of America, and I missed one. Anyway, Pfizer? Came together, yeah. And initially, the approach was going to be, how could we take Microsoft technology and do something really big with it across multiple industries? And these companies said, no, we're really not interested in doing that for you, Microsoft, but we really are interested in creating a cohesive network of peers because we're all misfits in our own company, in our own companies. And we need the stimulation of like-minded peers, but we're also really interested in exploring breakthrough tech together. And so, you know, we kind of came up with this statement that you see above is how we talk about the IOP to third parties. It's a way to energize and create across the normal boundaries of your own enterprise.
Now, I also heard an origin story that started out slightly differently. I think there were some folks at Microsoft originally thinking about the mission for this program in a slightly different way. Do you want to share that?
Well, it was originally pitched as the next billion-dollar business for Microsoft, and that was how they initially got their funding. So as I say, that was the premise at this kickoff meeting, to which all the other 4 companies said, not really interested in that. But we are interested, as I say, in creating a new sort of social net amongst these very unique roles that each of us played at our individual companies. We advanced the notion and sort of changed up and created this criteria. So we became sort of an exclusive network in the sense that we try and narrow it only to enterprise leaders who are at that 10 billion revenue mark and higher, and global in operation, because without that constraint, we initially had some larger and smaller players together. And while there are similarities in the leadership challenge at those different levels, it's difficult running a $500 billion a year company portfolio of innovations. It's difficult to talk to somebody from a $2 billion company who's just sort of breaking into what it means to run at large scale. So that scaling function has been really important for us to create a cohesive group and keep it solid. And I think that part of these sort of restrictions we put in place, when you and I were talking in prep for this, the restrictions we put in place actually have contributed to the health of the network. And prevented some of that natural chaos from getting too far away from us.
So can you tell us who's part of the network?
We cut across, whether it's entertainment, automotive, engineering, materials. But what it lets us do is develop, well, I'll speak from my own perspective. When I was a delegate to the program, this was secret sauce for me. I could go to an IOP meeting and talk with 20 or 30 other innovation leaders from other sectors I otherwise would never touch, and then bring that knowledge home. And for a while, I kept that very guarded, and that was my secret sauce, and I didn't share it much with other people at Bank of America. I learned over time that actually it was more powerful when I would bring those folks in and share this network with them. It would become, it would triple and quadruple the impact back home.
Can you give us a bit more of a sense, like the profile of the delegates? Who are they?
Sure.
Are they going to be part of this forever and ever? How does it all work?
Yeah, it's interesting. And longevity is an important point I want us to come back to. But the profile, these are generally the futurist for their company, maybe one of a couple of futurists. So you have people sort of at the pinnacle of their career in that regard. We also have R&D people. We have sometimes they're product division leaders who also have an innovation function there. So it really, generally 2 to 3 clicks down from the CEO is where we like to function. People who can actually make things happen at their company. So if at an IOP meeting we find a collaboration that works between 2 companies or 3 companies, they have the power to then go act upon it and steer strategy in their firms. And so that's why we're also a little bit, we push to a more senior person so that they can have that effect with the program.
Well, let's get into the meat. So what are you guys doing to foster idea exchange, to really bring that network to life?
Yeah, so we run a couple of events per year. I appreciate coming to your event because I get to steal ideas. You saw me taking pictures around. I always steal ideas from other people's events. But we run these events with an intentional sort of 40-30-30 ratio of planned content from experts, 30% structured networking, and 30% unstructured networking. We run, as you see, a couple of other techniques. But really what it's all about is trying to drive this sort of interaction. And in this network graph that we've put together, it's an attempt to show these multiple orbits that our members run in. And what you see is that it varies. It varies both by company, it varies by time. We talk to our membership that we're all on an innovation journey, and everybody's at a different point. So you can always find someone who's ahead of you in some aspects and is behind of you in other aspects. When we draw this map, obviously, Microsoft's at the center. We act as sort of the super member of this group. We don't own it. The group is run by an advisory board of 7 members. We have a permanent seat. The other 6 seats rotate. So we have this, I like the gardener term earlier. We're definitely gardeners of this network and work to, as you said, energize it to make more and more of these collaborations happen.
When we talked to you and other folks in your team, one of the things that stood out to me was this notion that when there's a new delegate member coming into the club, there's typically a set of behaviors that could be quite different from the more senior veteran IOP delegate. Can you talk a little bit about what is going on there? What is that journey?
Yeah, sure. So we have what we call the Delegates Pledge. And so we have each member company names 2 delegates, and each of these delegates takes the following pledge that, raise your right hand. I will return any text, call, or email within 48 hours from any other delegate with one of 3 answers. Yes, I want to play in that space. No, I'm sorry, that's really not our space. Interesting, but I can't drive anything at my company. Or what usually happens, number 3, I can't help you, but you should meet my friend Harold because he's working on a project that sounds a lot like what you're doing, and maybe we can get you together. So very quickly, we work to establish what I call extreme trust. Members and delegates trusting each other more quickly than they should in a natural way. And we do that with a couple of activities. This pledge is very important, and then we also demonstrate it. So we'll talk in a minute about a couple of the rituals. I'm a big believer in modeling, that if I can stand somebody up, a seasoned member, and have them model for you the way that an IOP member behaves. Tell me a story about a collaboration that happened because 2 delegates connected. That's what we expect of all of our members. And in fact, we now have started doing a health review each year, and we look quite closely at these analytics, and I've got another slide. We look very closely at our analytics within the network to understand who are the net givers, who are the net takers, and who has a balanced approach. So on the left, and we call this a tornado chart, kind of gives you an illustration member by member. Are they making more matches to others, or are they taking in more inquiries in the network? Now they also get their extractions in other ways, but this is a really important health factor for us. And when we find a member who is harvesting too much, we'll talk to them about it. And as well, this data is imperfect. This data is the perceived matches that are happening. So whenever we hear about it, we log it. But we also know there's some secret stuff going on. So when we've gone to a member and said, oh, well, it looks to us like you're harvesting a little too much. We think you should be giving more. They're like, well, what about this and this and this? Well, we didn't know about those activities.
Can you share some of the secret stuff?
So on the small scale, one that came out at the last meeting that was just spontaneous, Ford was working on a new Alexa skill. Starbucks was working on a new Alexa skill, and the delegates knew each other, and they connected and said, oh, wouldn't that be cool? And so now on a 2018 Ford, you can order your favorite Starbucks drink, and the order will go in, and then your GPS will bring it up, and there you've got this seamless end-to-end. And that's sort of a small, it's a cute story.
Thank you, IOP, for making this happen. Awesome.
More caffeine, yeah, in drivers. That's what we need. But on a more serious note, we have a case of a joint venture called Ilum that launched last year. It's a joint venture between Merck and Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is constantly looking for ways to commercialize their military solutions because they only have one customer, essentially. And so they're always looking for ways to reuse that technology. Merck is fighting the good fight in healthcare, but also saw this change happen where insurance reimbursements to hospitals were based now more on outcomes than on treatments. So they're focused on in-hospital infections are a big problem, and these days hospitals pay for it. If you come in for a knee operation and you contract an infection, it's on the hospital. They combined strengths and took technology that was used in the military for targeting and detection purposes and put it into hospitals to spot outbreaks of sepsis 4 hours faster than normal systems. And 4 hours doesn't seem like much until you learn that once you go septic, your life expectancy drops 50% per hour. So 4 hours is a real life and death kind of solution. And so this is a beautiful swords into plowshares kinds of story, and it never would have happened. Merck and Lockheed Martin aren't having coffee on a normal basis. So we felt it was a great example of bringing that together.
That's a great story. Now, Matt, I know it's not all success and roses and sunshine. When you have 60, 70 executives from 35 companies, there's a lot of different agendas, there's a lot of different cultures. Can you maybe talk a little bit about one example that illustrates some of those challenges? And you are kind of in the thick of things, and I'm thinking about Ming Lee and I had a chance to actually observe some member interactions.
Yeah.
There's a group that works on comfort as it relates to VR and AR. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So each year we go out and talk to each member in a sort of one-on-one kind of way. And I started hearing echoes of the same problem across. Hey, we all want to work in virtual reality, whether it's entertainment or engineering or medicine. We all have an interest in VR, but you know what? People get sick. Cyber sickness is a real thing. And we'd like to work on this as a group. And so we organized this VR comfort work group. But very quickly, as you said, found out a lot of different agendas in the room. And there really wasn't a space to collaborate. What was needed was more knowledge. And so we ended up creating a collective research collaborative where 3 or 4 companies in different combinations chose to co-fund a senior researcher, global, sort of the expert in the world on this topic, to go into the next level. And so while we had higher expectations of what was going to come from, we were able to salvage some collaboration, and of course this lays a platform and a track for the future of where this research might take them.
What I recall, some of the dynamics I thought were fascinating, where basically you were saying, I don't want to be the guy leading this group.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the leader of this working group. I want this to emerge organically from the working group, and that was not easy.
No, it was not. It was not. And the one sort of rival I had who was saying, well, I should run this. Fine, here's the stage. Go ahead and take it. Well, suddenly he had the stage and didn't have a whole lot to say. So, yeah, it's tricky leading innovation teams, and as you say, particularly when these are all people who are biased to action and want to get things done. The ratcheting or the coalescing of vision is a tricky one.
So we have time for one more area, and I know you have a slide on this. I have had a chance to follow what the IOP team is doing over the last 7 years. I went to some of your events 6 years ago, I think, with Anton to Amsterdam. And there's some very remarkable little tricks that you have.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the rituals?
Well, and it was fun, too. These 3 rituals, 3 of probably 6 or 7 that we have in total, conveniently form along this, classic divergence and convergence sort of innovation graph. We have Big Brag or What If, which is I call it a Quaker-style meeting. Every member can stand up and deliver a brag, or a what if. A beg is, hey, I'm doing this research into network activity. I could really use anybody have any insights? Have you read some good research? Do you know somebody? That's a beg, an invitation. A brag is, let me tell you about this deployment I just did, or let me tell you about so-and-so. And it's more of a sharing. And a what if is a postulation. What if X, Y, Z? All of these are invitations to conversation, and most importantly, the beg is an exposure of vulnerability. So we teach very quickly new entrants to this network that we want you to share your vulnerabilities, because innovation is about problems. Without good problems, there can be no good innovations. So we drive that to expand. I'll go to the end. We have a vote with your feet.
Skipping my favorite part.
Is a function. Vote with your feet is the function at the end where each speaker hosts a table and you vote with your feet. You go and sit and have a more in-depth conversation with a speaker, or perhaps someone who's done a bag, or anyone can host a table. It sort of brings closure. But the most interesting part happens in the middle at IOP Late Night. So every night from 9 till midnight, it's an open bar. We invite everybody to come down and join and have conversation. And what we discover, the bubbles were going to be ideas. They're kind of champagne bubbles too. The free-flowing conversation that happens during that divergence, and having no fear, driving the fear out and saying, hey, we're just having a beer. It's not like I'm asking you to commit $1 million. Let's just have a beer and talk about it. That's so important, because then it can drive towards a real conclusion at the end and serves as sort of a filtering function for what's the real and what's the not so real.
Fantastic. I think this is all the time we have. I really want to thank you, Matt, for making this trip out.
Absolutely.
I know you have to hustle to get to LAX to fly to Detroit. It was fantastic. Thank you for sharing your learning.
You bet. Thank you all.